Emma was the kind of child who brought light into every room she entered. A whirlwind of energy. She spent her days climbing trees, painting whimsical pictures, and riding her pink bicycle, its tassels dancing in the wind. But that light began to flicker. At first, it was small things. She grew tired more easily, abandoned her once endless bike rides, and napped more than usual. Then came the unexplained bruises, the relentless fevers, the dwindling appetite. Her parents, Claire and Brian, reassured themselves it was nothing, a growth spurt, a seasonal bug. But deep down, Claire's heart whispered a different story, one she didn't want to hear. Then came the visit to the doctor, the sterile waiting room filled with forced smiles, the whirlwind of tests and hushed conversations. Finally, the words that shattered their world. Emma has leukemia. The diagnosis turned their lives into an exhausting routine of hospital visits, beeping monitors and whispered prayers. Emma, too young to grasp the full weight of it, quickly learned to associate her name with furrowed brows and somber voices. Her golden curls thinned, her laughter faded, and the little girl who once painted the world in bright colors now fought a battle far bigger than herself. Despite the chemotherapy, the nausea, and the exhaustion that clung to her like a shadow, Emma's spirit remained unbroken. One evening, as she sat cross-legged on the living room floor, flipping through her old drawings, an idea blossomed in her mind. Simple, yet profound. "Mom," she said, her voice soft but certain, "what if I sold lemonade? People like lemonade. Maybe they'll buy it and help us with the hospital bills." Claire felt her throat tighten, her heart aching at the purity of her daughter's thought. Most children set up lemonade stands to save for toys or summer adventures. Emma, at just 7 years old, was thinking about how to ease her parents' burden. Swallowing the lump in her throat, Claire pulled her daughter into a tight embrace. "That's a wonderful idea, sweetheart. We'll make it happen." And so, the plan was set in motion. Not just a child's pastime, but a desperate act of hope. The following Saturday morning, beneath the golden California sun, Emma and Claire transformed a simple folding table into a beacon of determination. They covered it with a faded checker cloth, placed a pitcher of freshly squeezed lemonade in the center, and stacked plastic cups neatly to one side. But the real masterpiece was Emma's sign. With shaky hands and unbreakable resolve, she had drawn big, bold letters in vibrant crayon. "Lemonade for Hope." A smiling sun beamed from the corner, next to a bright red heart, the strokes uneven yet filled with undeniable warmth. Emma wore her favorite yellow sundress, the one she swore matched her lemonade, and a floppy straw hat that shaded her delicate face. Though the treatments had paled her complexion and stolen her golden curls, her determination burned brighter than ever. She took her seat on a small wooden stool, her feet dangling above the pavement, and with a hopeful grin, she waited for her first customer. At first, the street remained quiet. A jogger passed, offering a brief smile but no pause. A car slowed as the driver peeked at the stand, then drove off. The morning stretched on, and still no customers. But Emma, unwavering, simply adjusted her sign, poured herself a small cup of lemonade, and sat patiently. She wasn't discouraged. She knew kindness sometimes needed time to arrive. Finally, a familiar figure shuffled down the sidewalk. Mrs. Henderson, the elderly widow from 2 houses down, leaning on her cane. She stopped, her kind eyes scanning the sign before looking at Emma with a smile. "How much for a cup, sweetheart?" she asked. $1. Emma chirped. Mrs. Henderson pulled out a $10 bill and placed it gently into the mason jar labeled donations. "Keep the change, dear," she whispered, patting Emma's tiny hand. And just like that, the ripple had begun. One by one, people began to stop. A mother pushing a stroller bought a cup. Then a group of kids from Emma's school arrived, dragging their parents along. The whispers of Emma's story spread like wildfire, igniting hearts. Soon, neighbors who had never spoken before stood side by side, united by the bravery of a little girl selling lemonade not for pocket money, but for a chance at life. By midday, the donation jar had started to fill with crumpled bills and jingling coins. Conversations turned into encouragement, and smiles turned into generosity. But little did Emma know that something far beyond her wildest dreams was about to happen. Someone was walking toward her stand. Someone who would change everything. The sun hung high, casting golden light over the street, as Emma poured another cup of lemonade with careful precision. Her small hands gripped the sweating glass pitcher, the scent of citrus filling the warm air. The neighborhood hummed with quiet activity. Birds chirped, sprinklers whirred, and the occasional car rolled lazily by. And then, from the corner of her eye, Emma noticed a man approaching. He walked with an air of quiet confidence, his pace unhurried, his presence commanding yet effortless. Dressed in a weathered leather jacket and dark jeans, he had the kind of face that told 1,000 stories. Deep-lined, silver-streaked hair, and piercing eyes hidden behind a pair of sunglasses. Emma squinted. He wasn't a neighbor, not one of the regular joggers or dog walkers who passed through. There was something about him, something familiar. The man stopped a few feet away, scanning her stand with a faint smile. "Hi there." Emma greeted him, her voice bright and welcoming. "Would you like some lemonade? It's only $1 a cup." The man crouched slightly, resting his hands on his knees to meet her gaze. His voice, when he spoke, was deep, gravelly, filled with the weight of a lifetime. $1, huh? Seems like a bargain." He chuckled, looking at the sign. "Lemonade for hope, huh? What's this all about?" Emma, unfazed by the stranger's presence, pointed to the jar of donations. "It's for my chemo," she explained simply, her tone matter-of-fact but filled with quiet strength. "I'm trying to help my mom and dad, so they don't have to worry so much." The man's expression changed, softened. His fingers drummed lightly against his knee as he looked at her, something unreadable flickering behind his sunglasses. Then, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a checkbook. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked, pen poised above the paper. "Emma." He nodded, scribbling something down with deliberate strokes. Tearing the check from the book, he handed it to her with a small smile. Emma unfolded the slip of paper, her small hands trembling as she read the number written on it. Her eyes widened, her breath caught in her throat. $50,000, she whispered, barely able to get the words out. Claire, who had been watching from a few feet away, shot up from her seat, rushing toward the stand. 50,000? She repeated, her voice trembling. She took the check from Emma's shaking fingers and stared at it, her breath hitching as tears welled in her eyes. Oh my God, I don't even know what to say. Thank you so much. The man smiled, his rugged features softening. You already said it, he replied. This little girl here, she's the one doing the real work. And then a murmur rippled to the small crowd that had gathered. Someone gasped. Someone whispered, Wait a minute, is that Clint Eastwood? The name spread like wildfire. Heads turned, necks craned, and phones emerged as people scrambled to confirm what their eyes were telling them. Clint Eastwood, the legendary actor, the Hollywood icon, was standing at Emma's lemonade stand. The realization sent a spark through the small neighborhood gathering. What had started as a quiet afternoon of lemonade sales had suddenly become something much bigger. Mr. Alvarez, the friendly neighborhood mailman, was the first to step forward. You know what? He said, reaching into his wallet. Clint's got the right idea. Let's make sure this little girl gets everything she needs. He pulled out a crisp $50 bill and dropped it into the jar. The domino effect was immediate. A mother in line rummaged through her purse, pulling out a 20 and handing over. A man in a business suit, who had just been passing by, stopped, wrote a check, and placed it in the donation jar. Some people didn't even take lemonade. They just wanted to help. Dollar by dollar, bill by bill, the jar filled, then overflowed. Claire could barely keep up, her voice cracking as she tried to thank everyone. Emma watched in awe, her small hands gripping the edge of the table as the donations poured in. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like a sick kid. She felt like she was part of something extraordinary. What happened next was beyond anything Emma or her family could have imagined. Someone had recorded the entire exchange. The moment Clint Eastwood handed Emma the check, the moment the crowd erupted in generosity, the raw emotion of Claire breaking down in tears. The video hit social media within hours. By the next morning, it had gone viral. News outlets picked it up. Headlines blazed across the internet. Hollywood icon surprises a little girl fighting cancer and changes her life. The lemonade stand that touched America's heart. Clint Eastwood's act of kindness sparks national movement. Strangers began reaching out, asking how they could help. Letters flooded the family's mailbox. Words of encouragement, prayers, stories from others who had battled illness. One letter stood out. It was from a little boy in Kansas. Dear Emma, it read in wobbly handwriting. I saw your story and wanted to help. I don't have a lot of money, but I hope this $2 makes a difference. You're so brave. Love, Charlie, age 8. Emma pressed a letter to her heart, her eyes shining. Mom, she said softly, I want to keep all of these. I want to remember every single person who helped me. As the days passed, the outpouring of love and support only grew stronger. A well-known lemonade brand sent Emma a year's supply of their product, along with a heartfelt note. Emma, your bravery reminds us of the sweetness of life. Keep inspiring the world. Local businesses offered to cover remaining medical expenses. A nearby hospital pledged to help with any future treatments. The financial burden that had once weighed so heavily on Claire and Brian was suddenly lifted by the kindness of strangers. And it didn't stop there. Inspired by Emma's story, other children across the country began setting up their own lemonade stands. Not to save for toys, but to raise money for children in need. The hashtag Lemonade for Hope trended online, sparking a nationwide movement. What had started as a simple idea, a child selling lemonade in her front yard, had become something far greater, a movement of kindness, a testament to the power of generosity, a story that proved that even the smallest hands could make the biggest impact. For the first time in what felt like forever, Claire and Brian could breathe. The stress that had weighed them down for months, the endless calculations of medical expenses, the quiet conversations late at night about how they would afford the next treatment, had been lifted. The donations that had poured in from strangers, neighbors, and businesses meant that Emma's medical care was now secure. No more sleepless nights spent worrying over bills. No more anxious glances at the mailbox, dreading another hospital invoice. Claire stood in the kitchen one morning, holding a pile of medical statements, her hands trembling. With each bill stamp paid in full, the reality sank in. She sank into a chair, covering her face with her hands, and sobbed, not out of despair this time, but out of sheer, overwhelming relief. Meanwhile, Emma, blissfully unaware of the complexities of finances, felt only the joy of knowing her lemonade stand had worked. I helped, didn't I, Mom? She asked one evening, curled up beside Claire on the couch. Claire pulled her daughter into her arms, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Oh, sweetheart, you did more than help. You made a miracle happen. But Emma, ever the dreamer, wasn't satisfied with stopping there. Mom, do you think we could help other kids like me? That single question would change everything. Emma's lemonade stand had done more than fund her treatments. It had sparked something bigger than herself. With the extra donations they had received, Claire and Brian made a decision. They would use the money not just for Emma, but for other families facing the same terrifying reality of mounting medical costs. And so, Lemonade for Hope was born. What started as a simple, handwritten sign on a street corner turned into a registered foundation dedicated to helping families struggling with medical expenses. The mission was clear. No child should have to choose between fighting for their life and worrying about how to afford it. At first, the foundation started small, funding treatments for local children in need, covering prescription costs, and offering support to parents drowning in hospital debt. But just like Emma's story, it didn't stay small for long. News spread. Donations increased. Schools across the country began hosting lemonade stand fundraisers, each one carrying Emma's name and mission. And soon, Lemonade for Hope was more than just a foundation. It was a movement. What happened next was something no one could have predicted. Emma's story had already gone viral, but now it had taken on a life of its own. Inspired by her bravery, children across the country began setting up their own lemonade stands, donating their earnings to Lemonade for Hope. From small towns to big cities, yellow signs popped up in front yards and on school playgrounds, each one a tribute to a little girl who had turned lemons into something far sweeter than lemonade: hope. The hashtag Lemonade for Hope flooded social media. Major companies pledged matching donations. Celebrities shared Emma's story, some even hosting their own lemonade stands to raise awareness. A national news station invited Emma and her parents for an interview. Sitting on a bright studio couch, her feet barely touching the floor, Emma beamed as the host asked, "Did you ever think your lemonade stand would turn into this?" Emma shook her head with a giggle. "I just wanted to help my mom and dad. But now, we get to help so many more people. That makes me really happy." Claire, sitting beside her, squeezed her daughter's hand, her heart swelling with pride. Emma's small act of kindness had become something extraordinary, and people were taking notice, including one very familiar name. One afternoon, a few weeks after the foundation's official launch, a package arrived at Emma's house. It was a simple brown envelope with no return address. But when Claire turned it over and saw the sender's name, she gasped. "Emma!" she called, her hand shaking as she carefully tore open the package. Inside was a framed photograph, the very picture taken the day Clint had visited her lemonade stand. In the image, Emma stood in front of her sign, her lemonade pitcher in hand, grinning beside the Hollywood legend himself. Attached to the frame was a small, handwritten note. "Keep fighting, kid. You're making the world a better place." Clint. Emma ran her fingers over the words, her eyes shimmering with something deeper than happiness. "I want to make him proud," she whispered, holding the note to her heart. But Clint Eastwood wasn't the only one watching. The whole world had seen what she had done, and the world would never forget. Months passed, then a year, and yet Emma's story never faded. Her foundation continued to grow, helping more families every day. More schools joined the movement. More lemonade stands popped up. More people reached out, some to donate, others to simply say how inspired they were by a little girl's unbreakable spirit. And Emma? She kept dreaming. One afternoon, at a Lemonade for Hope event, she stood on a small stage, clutching a microphone with hands still a little shaky, but filled with confidence. The crowd, a mix of neighbors, volunteers, and supporters, watched as she took a deep breath and began to speak. "Hi, everyone. I just want to say thank you," she said, her voice clear and steady. "When I started my lemonade stand, I just wanted to help my mom and dad. I didn't think so many people would care, but you did, and now we can help other kids like me. So thank you for believing in me." The applause was thunderous. At the back of the crowd, unnoticed by most, stood Clint Eastwood, wearing a simple jacket and baseball cap. He watched with a quiet smile, his hands tucked into his pockets. He hadn't come for recognition or thanks. He had come to see the little girl who had taken his small act of kindness and turned it into something far greater than either of them could have imagined. As the event wrapped up, a reporter asked Emma what she had learned through it all. She thought for a moment, then smiled. "I learned that it doesn't matter how big or small you are. You can always do something to help. And when people help each other, amazing things can happen." Those words became the foundation's motto, printed on banners, t-shirts, and donation letters. They became a rallying cry for the movement, a reminder of the simple yet powerful truth behind Emma's story. Even the smallest hands can create the biggest waves. And sometimes, all it takes is a single glass of lemonade to change the world.